And away we go. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk, where we will be having a discussion about what is going on in the world today. Some news snippets, some news clips, some things you may know about, some things you may not. We'll read through some of that and have a little bit of a discussion. And of course, this is Coffee Talk, and you can find me on YouTube at Coffee Talk Live or Prepper University on YouTube, two very oppressed channels. So if you're new, please do go ahead and subscribe to one of those, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, where I can, thanks to Elon Musk purchasing it, put up memes that I wasn't able to before. I've been off of X or Twitter forever, but now I'm back on there putting memes up, as well as Fistful of Radio, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. You can find me there as well as we get ready to dive into the live portion. And of course, for those of you who are listening and not able to watch, I'll go ahead and read through as many of the comments as I can so that you can keep up with the conversation. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the people that are joining us in the live portion that takes place at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I see Helter here today, Dragon, Urban Angst, Boogers, Zane is here, ARN is here, D-Lo is here from North Carolina. D-Lo, North Carolina. I believe he's on the West Coast, though. And ARN says 16 military bases being built in Finland. Yeah, the tax dollars at work. So they can sit around in Finland and do nothing all day. Ragnar, Thor's Hammer is here. Glad you could make it today. And ARN says National Guard being deployed after Christmas to Horn of Africa to fight terrorists. Well, they could bomb it back to the Stone Age, but they'd only set them back a couple of weeks. So yeah, send them all over the world to fight terrorism, and can't manage anything here at home. Unfortunately, they got us divided up every which possible way in the United States and in most Western nations right now. But yeah, deploy them all over the place. They need to send them to Haiti too, apparently. And that's in the cards. Because Haiti as well as Venezuela, they've already got the Air Force doing flybys on the border of Venezuela. Because why not? Let's just spread ourselves all over the world, police the entire world. And Gary Edwards is here. Glad you could make it today as we get ready to crack open the first of our news bulletins for the day. And I see WCM is here. It says, afternoon, brothers and sisters. And Zane loves Haitian culture. Oh, and there's Rodney from New Zealand. Glad you could make it today. We go ahead and crack this open. And this is Suffolk County, New York. Suffolk County, New York. And this is from CBS New York, because I don't think this is being nationally syndicated, at least not yet. A couple of more greetings here. Nature Nerd says the U.S. already has over 800 bases, so now 15 more. Yeah, 15 more is a drop in the bucket compared to that. As well as Bingo has joined us. So CBS New York. Suffolk County becomes the first in New York to enact its sweeping police reform, because Lord knows they need more police reform. They don't have any police officers, but they they need reform. So what are they offering here? It says, we now have implemented all major elements of the police reform plan, according to Suffolk County Executive Steve Belloni. And he says, Suffolk County is the first to reach its goal, and it'll include police body cameras, bias training, public data on traffic and pedestrian stops, background checks on police candidates. They don't do background checks on police candidates. Who doesn't do that? Who hasn't done background checks since like the 60s? Seriously? that diversifying police ranks, translation, we're going to give priority to hiring black people. Behavioral mental health unit. Okay. The last part of the plan is creating a precinct level advisory board. So wasting more money on a committee. Quote, we are moving forward. I feel like it is a positive change, but it also takes work, said Rhonda Gooden, an advisory board member from Huntington. Well, if she's on the board and she just got the job, I'm sure she'll be thrilled. Volunteers will be watchdogs for their communities. So they're going to give people brown shirts and they can rat on everybody. Quote, when you argue and challenge each other, you get a better product, said Vanessa Bard Streeter, Deputy Suffolk County Executive. Policing is a product? Well, I guess if you're a law enforcement officer instead of a police officer, it is a product because you're protecting interests rather than people. After 12 years, Democrat Baloney is term limited and passing the torch of police reform to Republican Ed Romaine. Excuse me. Oh, they have term limits on their police. It's an ongoing process. Our hope is the new administration continues. They will build up the work that has happened so far, Baloney said. Critics say that racial and ethnic biases in traffic stops must be curbed, and they're still waiting for independent civilian complaint process. Long Island is the 10th most segregated place in America. How do you even determine that? Said Laura Harding, president of the Hold Still group Erase Racism. Oh, yeah, they're going to find racism everywhere then. When you think of segregation and a lack of diversity on the force, this doesn't really address that. Several young men spoke to CBS New York about the issue. One thing that I hope I will see is a whole bunch of transparency and a little more accountability. If I get pulled over, I want to know the reason I get pulled over by the cop. Don't they tell you why they pulled you over? Tail lights out, you were going too fast, you're going too slow. They're going to tell you something, and that's just going to pull you over and say, yeah, go on now. That doesn't happen. What is this, like 1940 Jim Crow? Oh, wow. Suffolk is reaching out to non-English speaking recruits and will waive exam and application fees for those who are low income. Really? Residents say they will be listening and watching. Residents are going to be rats. Do they get an armband? Can they wear, like in China, you get an armband that lets you know that you're a citizen reporter, volunteer. They got tens of thousands of them. They rat on each other all the time. Racial and ethnic bias in traffic stops is their complaint. I'll catch up a couple of comments here. I see All People has joined us. This is right up your alley, All People. Gary Smith is here. ARN says Democrat U.S. Senator Dick Durkin wants immigrants to serve in the U.S. military to earn citizenship and blocking lawmakers' access to flight roster to Epstein Island. And Urban says diversifying police ranks means hiring people for their non-white skin color prioritized over qualifications. Yeah, that doesn't end well. And the bias training will be for the dwindling pool of white officers who may object. And that All People has some things to say about LBJ and the Hart-Celler Immigration Reform Act. But, okay. So their complaint is that in Suffolk County, the majority of their traffic stops are people of color, either Hispanic or black. Okay. Let's take a closer look at Suffolk County, New York. Let's open up the Census Bureau's take on Suffolk County. Here it is, United States Census. This is the official website. And here's the population. This is Suffolk County, New York. Population 1,525,465. All right, now we need to get down to the ethnic demographics. Did I pass it? I think I did. Here we go. So ignore this part because this is all versions white. It says 82%. But what you need to come down to is right here. Here we go. Hispanic or Latino is 21%. 2 or more races, 2.1. Native Hawaiian, Asian, 4.8. Black or African American, 9.5. That's about average, because I think that only less than 13% of the United States is actually black. And white alone is 64. So 64% are Caucasian. 64.4% are Caucasian and not Hispanic at all. No Hispanic or Latino percentage. So that means that 35.6% is the racial diversity. I wonder how far off it is actually on the traffic stops that they think that it's primarily Black or Latino people that are getting pulled over. Rodney says, commie informants in the United States, for goodness sake, what the hell? Well, you remember yesterday when we were talking about the bill, and I don't know if it passed or not. I don't know if the bill passed. They had that Salon Safety Act bill, because they're trying to force all hairstylists in the United States to be mandated reporters. So that they can report on people if they see suspicious bruising or something like that. So yeah, that's what they're trying to do all over the place. Gary says, buffering. Are we buffering? Anyone else experiencing that? Bingo says, a judge just ordered Epstein's list of associates to be released. It would be nice to see if that ever actually happens. And then if it does happen, is anything going to be done about anyone on that list? Remember, they wouldn't even televise or allow any access to the trial of his associate. But, what's his name? From Pirates of the Caribbean, he had that messy divorce, and that was televised nonstop. And Gary says, poor people drive substandard vehicles. And WCM says 5x5. Zane says he's Latino, very white looking. Maybe they misprofile people, or people who wanted to conform just said Caucasian. And all people said 9 out of 10 blacks in the U.S. are from post-slavery era migrant families. And all people said Johnny Depp is a devil worshiper. But yeah, Johnny Depp is who I was thinking of. Johnny Depp trial, oh yeah, we'll bread and circus the hell out of that. But something that's really important, like discussing Epstein, so that we know what musicians and actors and politicians and big businessmen were going to an island to mess around with little kids. No, you don't need to know about that. Oh, you don't. That's none of your damn business. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about that at all. Raccoon says, remember Heidi Fleiss from the 90s, hooker madam to the stars? She had to make her list public. Charlie Sheen was her main client. That name sounds familiar. It sounds familiar. Zane says, I don't care about Johnny Depp's religious beliefs. Well, neither does anybody else. Some people care about it. I can't say that. Some people do care about that. Some people are concerned about it. We're going to stay in New York for a minute. And we're going to talk about, get ready for it. All people will love this. Reparations, people. It's time for reparations. Associated Press, New York will set up a commission to consider reparations for slavery. Oh, look, there's Al Sharpton. Hey, everybody. There's your buddy, Al Sharpton. There's your boy. And there's the governor surrounding herself by black people so that she can pretend like she gives a damn about what she's doing. I haven't read this article yet, but I'm going to say New York is starving to death. They are broke. They are overrun with illegal immigrants. Migrants, because they're a sanctuary city, begging for money, begging for donations from wealthy residents of New York, begging for money from the government to relieve the problem. God, I hate seeing Al Sharpton anywhere. I really do. I can't stand that guy. But begging for money, begging for relief, crying about the migrant crisis. Oh, we're broke. We're raising taxes. We're firing police. We're firing sanitation workers. You know, we're going to cut back on the fire department. We're not going to repair the roads, you know, whatever. But they're going to pay for a committee to consider something that isn't going to work. And even if they do come up with an idea that they, after they waste millions of dollars, millions of taxpayer dollars on some bullshit committee, if you did identify any descendants of slaves, you can't afford to pay them anyways. And New York was you know, the eastern states walked away from slavery long before the whole debacle of the Civil War. Never mind the fact that the majority, or at least most, of true slave descendants got a reparation already. Most of you are already aware of the fact that my wife is a direct descendant of slaves in the South, and they got reparations through what's referred to as heirs land or heirs property, which was land that was confiscated and donated to the families, and those family groups still live on that land. How the hell is New York going to identify and pay former slaves? And again, they're just wasting money on here. They're wasting more money on committees, and they don't have any. They're crying about how broke they are, but they're going to spend money on that. A couple of comments here, and I'll read the article. I know I already commented, and I didn't even read the article yet. Urban says the media sure is keeping the Epstein story quiet. I'm not even sure if Maxwell is in prison or where. Cruising says reparations will be what touches off real racism and race riots if it actually ever goes through. All People says an actor named Ryan O'Neal recently died. He punched his 4-year-old son's teeth out and made his daughter share a bed with him, and came onto his daughter at the funeral of Farrah Fawcett. That's pretty disgusting. Nature Nerd says, isn't welfare reparations already? And Bingo says it was ABC News article, breaking news, so it must be true. And ARN says Irish were slaves first, Arabs were the first slavers, and last to make slavery illegal. Rodney says it's bizarre people in New York keep voting for the same corrupt politicians and again. Yeah, funny how that works. Dragon says non-binding recommendations, in other words, lip service, just another waste of tax-paying dollars. And All People says Al Sharpton hails from post-slavery era family. Zane says he never heard of heirs land, HEIRS land, and if you, it'll be very difficult to look up, but you can find it on the Department of Agriculture's website, and they show they have maps laying out the divisions of it. I've talked about it in detail in details on this channel before. A lot of people are familiar with that. My wife's family was field hands, legitimate, like field picking cotton and tobacco and things like this. After the Civil War, there were swaths of land in different places that were chopped up and given to these families to live on. And the descendants of these family groups still live on, many of them still live in this property to this day. She's entitled to land there. And it's the government can't interfere with the land. I've talked to people when I've gone with her to visit her family, and talked to people down there that living on like 2-3 acre slabs of land, paying barely $100 a year in property taxes because the government can't interfere with anything that's happened there. They can't sell it, they can't take it, they can't move the people, they can't do anything. And it's there's like an elder for each family group. If you want property and you're part of one of the families, all you have to do is claim it. Hey, I see a spot of land over here. on such and such a street. Doesn't look like it's being used. Did anybody claim that? No, I'll pencil you in, and then you can build there. It's crazy. I never even heard of it until I went down there and looked it up afterwards. But like I said, some of the people that are in here are familiar with that. We talked about it before. Helter says cash settlements are never going to happen when it comes to the government. It's impossible to collect or distribute. More pandering for votes. All people is talking about slave descendants here. Continental slave descendants in the United States total about 4 million, are not the group that's even requesting, let alone demanding reparations. Gary says race hustlers want to cash out, but at the expense of the esteem of the Black community and at the expense of the taxpayers. Nature Nerd says California was never a slave state either. Urban said St. Patrick was a slave of the Romans, freed by his master. And I see Stuart is here. Thanks for joining us today, Stuart. I'll go ahead and read the article. Never even got to it. Albany, New York, New York State will create a commission tasked with considering reparations to address the persistent harmful effects of slavery in the state under a bill signed into law by Governor Hochul on Tuesday. That's nuts. Tuesday being this morning. The bill signing comes at a time when many states and towns throughout the United States attempt to figure out how to best reckon with the country's dark past. Every country has dark past. Every country has a dark present and very likely a dark future too. In New York, we will like to think we're on the right side of this. Slavery was a product of the South. The Confederacy, Hochul, a Democrat, said at the bill signing ceremony in New York City. What is hard to embrace is the fact that our state also flourished from that slavery. How? It's not a beautiful story, but indeed it's the truth. And that was then. What about now? Under the law, which was passed by state lawmakers in June, a study commission will examine the extent to which the federal and state government supported the institution of slavery. It will also look at how New York engaged in the transfer of enslaved Africans. New York fully abolished slavery by 1827, and much of New York City profited heavily off of the slave industry. I mean, are any of the businesses that might have profited from that in the early 1800s, do they even still exist? The commission would be required to deliver a report a year after its first meeting. Its recommendations could potentially include monetary compensation, but would be non-binding. Its findings are intended to spur policy changes and lead to programs and projects that attempt to remedy the negative effects of slavery on Black New Yorkers. This is not just about who we're going to write a check to and what the amount is. It begins the conversation with one recognizing the issues that affect Black people and descendants of slaves in the state, if you can even find any of them. If you can find any. And I saw a quote from her. I don't know if it's in this article. I'm just kind of skimming it real quickly. I did see a quote from Hochul talking about this bill, patting herself on the back, saying she's calling on all New Yorkers to be patriots about this. What's patriotism got to do with some bullshit committee to pretend to give a crap about Black people before an election? Nature Nerd says, why has the media never talked about how the government giving land to slave owners in the South? I have no idea. And Gary says future Black generations that point at slavery will get no sympathy if reparations go through. Oh, if they get a taste, they'll want more. Robert says, have you seen the new movie out, Jones Plantation? No, I have not heard of that, Robert. I have not heard of it at all. Zane says that California did have slavery. It was called on compounds called rancheras. Native Americans were forced to work in those places. And Raccoon says Democrat tactics to keep people voting for them, give handouts and pretend to care. And Urban said reparations is another way of doing socialism. Take from people who work and give to people who don't. And Cruising says they must be trying to claim that because the North textile plants relied on Southern cotton, that the Northern states are compliant in how the cotton was produced. Maybe. Maybe that I have no idea. I'm sure they'll scrape something up if they're forced into a corner on the subject. And Paul is here. He says 5 by 5, brother Lima Charlie, keep up the fight. Thanks. And Urban said before cotton it was hemp, and it's an interesting story how that industry was replaced. And all people said no such thing as the black community, as the United States alone has about 90 different black communities from all over Africa, the Caribbean, and Latin America. Yeah, they call themselves a community publicly, but privately, they don't get along with each other. And that's something I've talked about before, and that's something that was very evident when I worked the juvenile justice in the facility, and was majority black, quite frankly. And they were all females in the facility. I dealt mostly with female clients. And they couldn't get along with each other and often would have fights about skin color. And they were all black. And that's where the term crispy comes from. I've mentioned that before. If you were too dark, they called you crispy. If you were too light, they called you a brown bagger. Oh, you think you're so smart with your high yellow skin trying to be white and stuff like this. They would bicker about how dark or light they are. It's like, the hell is wrong with you? What is wrong with you people? But, oh, if something comes up, they're all black. That's when they're all black, when they want something. That's the problem. And Zane says kind of like the Native American community. Yeah, I've seen the same thing in the Native American community, or indigenous Indian community, indigenous American Indians. Also, while I was living in Kansas, because they don't get along either. They don't get along. They'll pretend to if they want something, but otherwise they don't get along. They'll fight with each other and bicker with each other. As we shift around, this is something that came up yesterday. Somebody asked about it, so I'll go ahead and throw it out there. This is more gossip than news. And this is a Time magazine article. What to know about Washington's scandal over sex in a Senate hearing room. Somebody brought it up yesterday and asked if I had heard about it, and I had no idea what they were talking about. But yeah, there are articles about this, and I'll go ahead and breeze through this here. Capitol Hill was rocked over the weekend by the circulation of an explicit video of two men apparently having sex in a congressional hearing room. The 8 second, that's 8 seconds, pornographic clip, first posted Friday evening by right-wing media website The Daily Caller, was reportedly leaked from a private group chat for gay men in politics. The report, why do they have to have their own group? You know what I mean? It can't be that they're all interested in politics. They got to be gay first. Whenever you see something like that, there's something wrong, I think. Was reportedly leaked from a private group chat for gay men in politics. The report, which did not name the participants and blurred a face that appeared in the video, claimed it was a congressional staffer in the sex tape and identified the setting room as 216 in the Hart Senate office building. Okay. The Spectator, a conservative British magazine, reported hours earlier that an unnamed staffer for Senator Ben Cardin from Maryland had publicly shared a series of indecent photos and videos of himself engaging in sex acts in the so-called hallowed halls of Congress. The description of one photo in particular bore resemblance to the video shared later by the Daily Caller. The news immediately gained traction in conservative media, while details remained scant. Outlets, including the New York Post and Washington Examiner, identified the staffer as Aidan Mays Zerbulski, if I pronounce that correctly, a legislative aide for Cardin. In a statement to Political on Friday night, Cardin's office said Aidan Zerbulski is no longer employed by the U.S. Senate. It added, "We will have no further comment on this personal matter." Cardin, who has spent nearly 4 decades in Congress, announced in May his plans to retire next year. I bet. I bet. Oh, man. Gary says the human brain learns by contrast. The color black will always suffer by comparison to the color white. This is the unspoken privilege even among light-skinned blacks. And okay, as I move around here, but yeah, that's what the story was, unfortunately. Let me see. Helter says, my first thoughts were this has got to be a classic example of art imitating life. This is the physical embodiment of what Washington does to its citizens every single day. Yeah, but for a lot longer than 8 seconds. Urban says the United States of trans. I don't know if I could read the rest of that without getting in trouble with ScrewTube. But yeah, apparently things have been getting photographed and filmed in Congress. That's embarrassing. In congressional hearing rooms. The senator is going to retire. The staffer that's been identified has been fired. But it's already been done. The damage has been done. Where's security in these buildings? Where's security? Where they must have like 500 cameras in that building. They couldn't have figured that out a long time ago and dealt with it. They couldn't. They gotta wait till now. That's incredible. It's embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. And again, no dignity in government anymore. And Urban says, I can't believe my comment above wasn't flagged. Yeah, you've had comments flagged before, haven't you? Because I don't mess with comments unless somebody's in here trolling or spamming. I won't pull a government. I wish I could pull a government down. I won't pull a comment down, but YouTube will, and often does. And then Nature Nerd says, why would the government allow inappropriate videos to be shot in Congress Hall? Well, apparently they didn't know. Kind of like how they didn't know where the cocaine came from. You remember that story? What cocaine? How did that happen? We're going to jump from Washington, D.C. to Ohio. Local news, News 5 Cleveland. You might find this interesting. According to this, 46% of the refugees that are arriving in Ohio, that is illegal immigrants, are from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Democratic Republic of Congo. That's where they're coming from. Let's dump them in Ohio. That's a good place for them. It says Cleveland, Northeast Ohio has welcomed refugees from all over the world for years. Have they? They welcomed them with open, loving arms, apparently. But more recently, there's been a large wave of people coming from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. From Afghanistan to Ukraine, the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants has been quite busy. Yeah, we know that. So we went from, almost 100 people in 1 year to 100 people a week, said Darren Ham, the director of the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants at the Cleveland office. But those aren't the only countries people are fleeing from. I think in light of many other communities that are arriving to Northeast Ohio and Cleveland proper, I think it's hard for the Congolese to obtain the same attention, said Ham. According to the United Nations refugee agencies, fighting in the Democratic Republic of the Congo has been going on for decades. That's most of Africa, right? But in 2022, the humanitarian crisis worsened due to a more recent spike in violence, leaving 6.2 million displaced within the country and 1 million seeking asylum in places like Northeast Ohio. What made these people, if I can even trust anything that they're saying? I'm in the Congo. I've never known anything but warlords and fighting. This is nothing new to these people. Going on for decades, but it's been going on longer than that. And a million of us decide that we want to just go to Cleveland for some reason. I got an idea. Let's go to Cleveland. That's brilliant. How did that happen? Back to the article, they make up sometimes upward of half, and in some years more than half of all the arrivals that we've seen come through the U.S. Refugee Assistance Program. According to the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, in 2023, more than 2,800 refugees arrived in the state. Of that, 1,304 were from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. At the May Dugan Center, they are also seeing some of those refugees. They bring a lot of their problems with them, Ohio. I'm just saying, if they truly are refugees, truly seeking asylum from war and famine and poverty, regardless of that, this is all they've known their entire life. And many of them can be pretty dangerous to your society. Just saying. And back to the comments real quick. Nature Nerd says the Congo is in a constant war, poverty, unrest, and coups. But how are they getting to North America so quickly? Ask the Biden administration. They're the ones inviting everybody here. Cruising says they have fighting-aged men from the DRC going to Ohio. Wow, that's like we can't even talk about what goes down in the Congo on YouTube without getting banned. And Donna says Washington is now known as the red light district. Yeah, red light, green light, stop and go. Urban says, I think Congolese are French speaking. You might be right. You might be right. And Zane says Africa is a very culturally complex place and that Cleveland is a very diverse place with a lot of opportunities. So I get why Congolese people are moving there, or they're being sent there. They're being directed there. Remember, a lot of these people in these various countries have been saying that they've been getting invited and encouraged to come to the United States. So we don't know what made them decide to go there. But I'd be interesting to see random Congolese people in Ohio interviewed and asked, why Ohio? Why Cleveland? And it wouldn't surprise me to find out that they were directed there. Speculation, of course, because I don't know. But, Gary says, relabeling. Okay, relabeling is a liberal trait. Trying to force social change by adjusting commonly accepted terminology is high-handed in most cases. Instead of saying fat, we must say weight challenged. Weight challenged. I'm a weight challenged individual. I'm not too big. You're biased. Oh, unbelievable. And who's paying for this? That's a lot of people. He quotes again here, I want people to know Congolese, Rwandan, Ugandan, Kenyan, Tanzanian, Afghan, Ukrainian, Syrian, any come to this place looking for the same opportunities others have for more than 100 years. They keep their head down, they work hard, they overwhelmingly succeed, and they give back. Is that true? Or is that just PR? Are you just covering your butt so that nobody will call you racist? I think it's really amazing story we get to see play out over and over in this community. Yeah, but when you're talking 100 a year, because they talked about that in the very beginning, we went from 100 people in a year. 100 people in a year might come to Cleveland to be hardworking and give back to the community. If it's 100 a week, that's a different story. You can't possibly process that many people and have them be productive. All that is a burden on taxpayers. Sorry. Hate to say it. Let me catch up here. Try to catch up here because there's a lot of extra comments and it's bouncing around again. Urban says Ohio will be the new Congo just as Minnesota is the new Somalia. Trying to catch up. Where are we here? Nature Nerd says Amish and Ohio are really going to get along with the war-torn Congolese. Yeah, I bet. Who knows? Maybe the Congolese people want to buy cheeses and raisin bread and cookies and stuff at the farmers markets. Because if you get welfare, and especially if you're in the WIC program, you can get those green checks, if you've ever seen them, for farmers markets. and cash them in at farmers markets. They're like $5 checks, and you could buy any kind of baked goods there. I know they used to do that in Massachusetts. I don't know if they do it in Ohio, though. And Ghost Wolf says we need to bring back shame to many Americans. They don't know it. I agree. And Rodney made a $10 donation to the channel. Thank you, Rodney. Much appreciated. But he says he has to go and have a Merry Christmas. Yes, indeed. I hope you enjoy your holiday. And Zane says the Congolese are going to become Amish. That'd be a really interesting transition if they could pull it off. If they could pull it off. But that's interesting. And that's just Cleveland that they're talking about. Hell, Americans don't want to go to Cleveland. I don't know what they're going to do there. That's overwhelming. I got a video clip to show if it'll pull up. I'm going to try to let me pause this. No, do right. I'm going to pause this and turn the sound on. Okay. I might have to restart that. There's a video clip I want to show. It's not a news article, but I thought it was interesting. I thought this was interesting, and I want to share it with everybody. And this it's a woman in a podcasting interview making a misogynistic comment to the DJ, and he calls her on it, and she has a breakdown. She has a breakdown on camera, and I want to share this, and I'm just waiting for it to cycle. So I'm just prattling for a second here, so that we can get an opinion on this, and I'll try to make sure you can hear it. If we're all ready for it, please let me know whether or not. Let me get rid of that comment. Let me know whether or not you can hear this. It'll recycle in a second. Watch it carefully. Right here. Real tears start to come. They're going to run down her face. There it is. Right there. See it? I'm not, maybe someone can tell me who that woman is. I'm not sure who she is. Why I wanted to share this is because this is what everybody needs to do. He was talking about feminism in the article, and this is what it says down here. He's talking about abandoning feminism. That's what the DJ made a reference to, abandoning the concept of feminism. She accuses him of being misogynistic, and he asked her, can you tell me what your definition of misogyny is? And she started to choke up. She was legitimately crying. She didn't touch her face or anything, but tears did start to come. And you could, if you watched, and that's why I tried to point it out, I don't know how well some of you who are watching can see, was crying. Tears started running down her face. He called her on it. She couldn't even define the term, but she's accusing people of it. And that's something that a lot of people need to start doing. That's what a lot of people need to start doing. Helter says audio's getting muffly. Nobody could, people had trouble hearing it. Let me cycle it again. Maybe it didn't, there, how's that? You all see that now? And I'll run it one more time. He called her on it. and she broke down and cried and then wanted to leave. She abandoned the interview and left the studio. And I'll back the speaker up a little bit because somebody said that it was a little bit muffled. Everybody ready? We'll try this again. I'll run it one more time and see if you can see the tears. Where's the thing?
You guys are all just like really misogynistic.
How do you define misogyny? What? How do you, I'm just asking how you define misogyny.
Right here, there are tears running down her cheek.
Can I go?
Are you okay? Like, do you want to go as in leave? If you, yeah, no, look, if you want to leave, you can leave. I was hoping we could continue having a conversation, but, I mean.
Okay.
And again, I'll put it out there because I don't recognize her. I don't know most modern, if she's an actor, singer, whatever the hell she is. If anybody recognizes her, you can go ahead and tell us in the comment section. Some of you might know better than I do. But again, I thought that clip was interesting because he called her on it. Tell me what it means. She can't answer the question, but she probably beats people over the head with that term all the time, thought she was all smart, and was so embarrassed, she started to cry. And all people says what a nut she is. And Helter says lots of feminists claim they're strong and independent and need no men. Lots of men are checking out of the workforce. Little do they realize without men to keep the economy going, they're screwed. There's a lot of jobs that men do that women will not, and in many cases cannot do. And they would be really screwed in the workforce. Gary says, I see she has the typical nose ring many of them have these days. Raccoon says, no idea who she is except a moron. ARN says they don't know what misogyny means. Urban says feminism died when it sided with Hamas. Wow. And Nature Nerd says send her to Africa or Asia or Europe, and she could see how America is the least misogynistic country in the world. Yeah, there's far worse places you could be than in America, honey. And Zane says no nose rings are useful. Yeah, you hang a chain to it and you drag people around. I don't know who she is that she was being interviewed on this at whatever it says back there. I just ran across this clip and thought it was interesting how she, and not only that, I mean, she could have just declined to answer even. I don't want to get into that. Move on to the next subject, please. You know, and just kind of whitewashed it and moved on. Not even smart enough to do that. Gonna sit there and blubber and cry because she got called on it. Well, oh, but I thought she was a strong, independent female. I guess not. I guess not so much. I guess not so much. You know a strong woman when you meet one. You really do. My wife is a strong woman. But she would never sit there and brag about it or rub it in anybody's face or try to do anything that she knows that she can't, to prove something that nobody gives a shit about. All people says feminists always resort to stereotypical tears, and usually crocodile tears at that. If she made herself cry on demand, she should be acting. And Dragon says feminism is no longer about equality of the sexes. Vast majority want the perks without working hard for it. And then Zane says the Saudis are real eye openers. I guess in reference to feminism, you mean. As we drift around here, maybe somebody who watches this after the fact will recognize her and can explain who she was. Sorry about the confusion about the video not posting. I thought it was up, but it was not. And we're going to jump to NBC News exposing election fraud. Election fraud. And this is another pat ourselves on the back and check the box news article. That's what this is. That's what this is. And I highlight an article like this because these kind of articles piss me off. This is not truly exposing voter fraud. This is what government likes to do to pretend like they're protecting you from voter fraud, because this article is a load of crap. NBC News. Elected official among 6 DC residents fined for double voting in 2020. Oh my God. A local official in Washington, D.C. was one of 6 people fined this month by the city's Board of Elections for double voting in the 2020 general election. Vanessa Rubio, an elected advisory neighborhood commissioner, was fined $500 after the District of Columbia Board of Elections found that she'd voted in both D.C. and Maryland. The panel said she had told them that, quote, she didn't vote in person in D.C. in the 2020 general election, but that she did not recall voting in Maryland. After being shown her signature on a voting card for Maryland, Rubio acknowledged that the signature was hers, albeit a sloppier version, and said it was possible she voted there but didn't recall doing so. Finally, Ms. Rubio stated that it was never really stated that you are not able to vote in more than one state, and that she thought that if one attempted to do so, the system would block one from doing so, the board's order said. Rubio did not respond to requests for comment on Monday. Neighborhood commissioners are elected to 2-year terms. The post is nonpartisan and unpaid. 5 others were also found to have voted in D.C. and Maryland, all claiming to have done so by mistake, and they were each fined $100. Rubio, who was first elected in 2020 and re-elected last year, was fined a higher amount because as an elected official, we see fit to hold her in a higher standard than other voters, the board said in the decision. Oh no, voted twice by accident and denied it. First, she said that she didn't remember if she did or not. And then when they provided her evidence, she said, oh, well, I thought that if you voted twice by accident, that it would throw one of the votes out. Whatever, honey. That's a load of crap. You voted for Biden twice. That's what happened. And so did those other people. But, you know, with all of the things that are going on as far as possible voter fraud that people have talked about and worried about and tried to expose and made arguments for, this is what they're going to hand you and claim that they're looking out for the general voting public. Oh, this group of these 6 naughty, shame on you, these 6 people, including an elected official, oh no, voted twice by accident or on purpose by accident or by mistake. I don't know. And we're going to give them a big bad fine so that they'll never do it again. Slap on the wrist. See, voting public, we got your back. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Don't worry about election fraud because we got you. It ain't going to happen. And Zane says, yup, voter fraud. Indeed. And Nature Nerd says there's videos of women who escaped Afghanistan crying that they enjoyed having freedoms when America ran things. Now, since the Taliban runs things, women have 0 rights and women's education is illegal. Big surprise. That's Sharia law for you. Gary says K-fob means scripted reality, usually used to describe professional wrestling scripts and showmanship. And Dragon says when democracy is on the edge of collapse, better cheat. At least that is the logic. That's not the kind of voter fraud people are worried about. They're worried about like grand scale, like packing ballot boxes or rigging voting machines voter fraud. That's the stuff people are worried about. And when you talk about that, you get in trouble for even bringing it up. You get in trouble for even bringing it up. You can't mention that. If I talked about that in a video, I might get flagged. I might get, I might get a strike. Okay. But then they want to talk about it and they give you a bullshit story like this. And that's national news. And then a fine. a fine. I thought that you got jail time for double voting, didn't you? I don't know how the law. Maybe it's different in Washington D.C. Maybe that works differently. I have no idea how that law goes down. But that's the kind of like BS story they give you. We're pretending to be doing something. Here's an example of voter fraud that we caught and we dealt with it and it won't happen again. So calm down, American people. Calm down, buddy. And it's so serious. The pushback against that type of concept, as you recall, and I did a video about it a couple of years ago, that if you are an election denier, that's the term they use. You're an election denier. You could be on an FBI watch list. They have as a red flag on the FBI watch list, because I don't think they've rescinded it since the election, that being an election denier is a reason to have a flag on your name. It's one of the reasons, one of the things that they would consider you a person of interest for is denying that the election was legitimate. So much for free speech. If you think something is wrong, you should have a right to talk about it, even if you are wrong. If you're wrong about a subject, you have a right to talk about it. You should have a right. First Amendment says so. But then, we don't really have rights. We have privileges. We have privileges, and they can take them away very easily. And Gary Smith says, probably depends on who you double voted for. Yeah, it doesn't say, actually. It doesn't say who she double voted for. I assumed Biden because, 81 million votes. 81 million and one because she double voted. I have no idea. I have no idea who she double voted for. But yeah, I'm one of those people that I'm suspicious of elections. I've talked about my reasons why, including my voting machine story from the 90s, from when I was still living in Boston. Many of you have heard that story before, and I've actually done a video on it some years ago, and it should still be up. I don't think they ever took that one down, about catching them throwing voting machines in the trash back in the mid-90s during, I believe it was a mayoral election. Gary Edwards says a lot of people root for the bad guy in professional wrestling. A lot of people root for fraudulent elections because they like to cheat to win. And Nature Nerd says Washington, D.C. didn't even have delegates until 1971. It's not a state. That's true. And it shouldn't count for elections if Puerto Rico and American Samoa don't have representation. And WCM says definitely a selection. Definitely a selection. But like I said, I'm sure you're all familiar with that. So even back since the mid 90s, I've been suspicious of voting practices on large scales. And that was just a mayoral election. But then, mayor of Boston is a big deal. Mayors in certain communities are as good as a governor or as big as being a governor. Mayor of New York, mayor of San Francisco, mayor of Chicago are a big deal. So is mayor of Boston because it's a big hub. So, yeah, I could see cheating going on in that election. And I suspect that it did happen at that time. Like I said, I've talked about it before. But apparently you can't even talk about that now because if you deny anything from the election, you could be on a watch list. And that is a scary place to be. Scary place to be. As I go ahead and find myself at the top of the hour, I'll go ahead and start wrapping things up. You see Dusty, for those of you watching, been sitting here keeping me company the whole time. Well, she's been asleep, so she's been ignoring me the whole time. But a lot of people like to see Dusty, and there she is. Anyway, this is Coffee Talk. You have been watching and or listening to Coffee Talk, and that is at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, as well as Prepper University, simultaneously broadcasting Monday through Friday. If you care to find me there, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Fistful of Radio, podcasting out of Atlanta, fistfulofradio.com. Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. You can find Coffee Talk there. Special thanks to Rodney for making a donation to the channel. Very much appreciated. Every little bit helps. Always happy to get a donation. Goes a long way. Hope everybody got something out of the conversation today. Thanks for joining us if you were able to. And with that, I'll go ahead and wrap up and see you again tomorrow.